Hello and welcome to episode number 12 of this podcast. My name is Elliot Greenman.
I'm Alexis Henel.
And this week we had your friend, Helen Cooke on.
Helen Cooke is a nutritional therapist. She's functional medicine orientated. She's teaching, she's learning a lot, she's looking at scientific evidence. So it's really quite... it's really interesting to really talk about science being involved in that realm, basically, and we talked about all sorts of the projects she's involved with, especially in Bristol. I think she used to work at the homeopathic hospital, at the Penny Brown Center, and I think from all that experience, I think she works in Cirencester as well as Bristol, and it's excellent. Podcast, quite short actually, and to the point, really straight down the middle, really. It was really good.
Yeah. As always, if you would like to connect in any way, please do like, share or comment or whatever. And we hope you enjoy the podcast.
Perambulations in franglais.
So, Helen.
Hi.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Yes. You too.
I guess let's go into who you are
and what you do.
Yeah.
Who am I? Well, I'm Helen Cooke. I'm a nutritional therapist, taking a functional medicine approach. So I work freelance in Bristol, Cheltenham, and Cirencester at the moment, and I also do some teaching, nutrition, diploma of integrative health, and do a bit of external quality assurance work to a couple of nutrition colleges in Ireland. So yeah, my work's quite varied, which is great.
That's amazing.
And did you say you were doing a bit of research as well, or you were?
I'm involved in sort of ongoing research, really, try and capture some of the outcomes of my work and things. So yeah, I'm not actively doing research at the moment. I've done master's degrees and done research in the past.
In the past,
Yeah. So now I've been involved in this work for quite a long time. This sort of whole person health field.
That's amazing. You must have seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, I'd have liked to see a few more changes, but...
Like what?
Well, kind of, I suppose, a little bit more integration of both worlds, the sort of medical and the complementary. So initially I trained as a nurse. I trained as a nurse in London in the 80s, so giving my... age away a little bit here, and then I didn't really want to stay in traditional nursing, so I realised it wasn't really for me, so I went to work in an addiction clinic, which took a very sort of whole person approach, and so there was obviously all the sort of counsellors and the therapy support, but there was also people doing relaxation, doing acupuncture and all that kind of thing. So I was doing the nursing, running the detox unit there, but got to understand more about how a multidisciplinary approach could work, sort of psychologists and all sorts. And so that was my sort of first dipping my toe into that world. And then I got talking to a woman who used to come and do relaxation therapy there, and I said that I was thinking of moving to Bristol, and this was about 1990, and she said, it's an amazing place that you could work, which was a cancer centre, but it uses a very whole person approach. So and it was set up.
What was it called?
It used to be called the Bristol Cancer Help Centre, and now it's called the Penny Brown Cancer Care Centre. So it was one of the founding sort of complementary therapy centres in the UK.
What do you mean by the word complementary?
Well, for all sorts of health, it was sort of areas of health like that can be used alongside medical approaches.
Okay. So like nutrition.
Like nutrition,
as opposed to alternative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because alternative is generally instead of.
So
complementary.
Okay,
so Alexis' work is complementary, and it's things that can be used alongside medical approaches.
Nice. Yeah.
So that was a cancer charity basically, and I worked there for 16 years and trained in lots of therapies and did a degree in nutrition and a master's degree in complementary health studies, and got involved in research there, and led a big therapy team. So yeah, I've had quite a sort of exciting career really in this whole person complementary kind of health field.
That's amazing.
And then I started going, decided about 12 years ago to go freelance, so stepping out of the charity work a bit, but I'm still involved in some charities in Bristol. So I've been really lucky in my career to be doing all these amazing things with a lot of really extraordinary people who, especially in Bristol, you know, there's been real people,
eclectic,
real eclectic mix.
That's it.
People
take to it a lot in Bristol, don't they?
Yeah,
they seem to.
They do. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it's not so foreign.
And I suppose the changes that I say would have liked to see more is a bit more of the embracing from the the medics. It's getting better, but I still, in fact, now I get referrals. I actively, for the first time this year, I've been getting referrals from a consultant gastroenterologist for the nutrition and digestive health work that I do. I work alongside a psychiatrist in Bristol, and we're going to be developing more around the mental health, sort of natural approaches to mental health, which we're hoping to do more of next year. But I just hear really from the clients who come and see me that their doctors are still quite sceptical about a lot of things that aren't, kind of real medical model, which is a shame really, because most of these things can be done safely alongside, and we'd all like a lot more communication. But
we are quite gregarious people, so we lack a team of people around us. Our health being dealt with by only one person is a bit sad.
Yeah.
Having more people around who are involved into integrating the whole different parts, but having a specialty in one part or two.
Absolutely.
And everybody's got these overlaps and the thing, all of a sudden everybody's pulling in the right direction.
Yeah.
And maybe the patient is very active in his recovery or in the process, or I don't know, like there's plenty of ways to go as well under the rainbow, or and then to be accompanied and to be able to, I don't know, I was hearing about something we administer anti-cancer drugs to the patient at different time of the day to look at the chronosynchronicity of things really. So depending on the type of cancer and things. So the medics as well in oncology have got a bit of a wider view of the whole lot with, like your maybe cellular mediated response and your maybe humoral mediated response, which are driven by different hormones and at different time of the day. So the diurnal
circadian
rhythm, which are quite linked with the adrenal cortex especially, and the stress response and the dampening effect it has on different immune response. So depending on the cancer and the thing, they tend to administer at different time of the day. So you can receive your treatment at night or in the morning, because your cortisol is very high in the morning or very low at night, and then you can alternate between the two, and you get less side effect, you get better effect from the medication. I think so it's embraced in small pockets really, in a way really, and it's good that there's specialization in a way really, but we need to specialize in people really, and that's what maybe complementary therapies do best really. We don't specialize in organs or things really, which is a bit more is less complicated, is more complex. That's it really.
Less complicated, more complex.
To actually look at it from a scientific point of view really, but to look at it from a complementary point of view is more complicated, less complex really.
I see.
Seeing all the interacting factors and things, so that's
there's a right brain to take into there's half of the brain at least, we need all the mind, depending if it's which model we use. But we need to contend with the right side of people's brain a bit, and the imaginative and the metaphorical and the living really.
From what the model that we're studying, the psychotherapy model that we're studying, I'm pretty sure it's from there. One of the guys says the issue with psychotherapy is that it grew up out of science, outside of science. And to me, I don't know what it says about me, but to me that really resonated to me, because I've had like lots of different issues throughout my life, and then just went deep into reading lots of different different models, different books, all sorts of things. And it kind of seemed that way. Like lots of people have lots of really great stories and methods that worked for obviously some people, but I tried to apply them and either wasn't able to get to the application of it or it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it was actually the same with nutrition. Obviously that hasn't grown up outside of science, but it just seemed that there was so many different conflicting ideas.
Yeah, there really are.
And then I finally came to the conclusion, which I guess most people do, which is you need to see someone who's going to advise what's right for you rather than
just making the guest. I guess you get you want a shortcut really.
Of
so
course,
you want
to save your money. You don't want to have to pay somebody. And
DIY.
Yeah, and there's so much information on the internet now, and I think that's great for people and it can work for them. But then a lot of people come to me and they say they've really had enough of going to Dr. Google because they're just like getting absolute inner tears. So I saw somebody earlier and she said, one neighbour's saying this and another friend's saying, oh, just stop dairy, and other was like, oh, it was tomatoes for me, and you just have to kind of then try. And sometimes people just get completely overwhelmed and in a spin and either super restrict their diet, which really isn't a healthy way to be and is actually a really miserable way to be. But it is tricky because there is a lot of conflicting evidence. I spend a lot of time trying to really keep my finger on the pulse of that evidence, and partly because I do some teaching. I have, it feels like a responsibility to do anyway when somebody is paying you for your, kind of expert advice. But because I teach too, I really have to keep my finger on the pulse, and I love it. I get a bit overwhelmed by it because there's so much all the time that's coming out. But it's
especially in the nutrition. In all of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
There's a lot coming out.
Yeah.
And in the psychiatry part of it as well, quite a lot. And there's quite a fair bit of psychiatry who's really open to having a scientific scrutiny on the procedure. So the human given thing we do is very extensively analyzed and studied in different environment, in clinical environment, in hospital environment, in private practice, all the rest really. And it's quite a fair bit. And all the Rogerian way of doing, which is another patient-centered, so humanistic or phenomenological, whatever way of doing, they are as well very happy to be scrutinized and to see the process of how people, the experience people have of the process, basically. And how it dampens their response to stress or anxiety or different factors, really. And I think people who are quite happy to be scrutinized from a scientific fashion, but don't forget the left brain as well, because if we go too much in the right, we forget the left brain really. So is to take with us a bit of the left brain and that whole sequential way of doing, which is a bit more kind of like reason based really. That's that enlightenment type thing a bit really. That's really quite an important part of it really. Because we need to not go stratospheric too much really. No. We need to stay nicely feet on the ground. We do better at that one atmosphere.
I think sometimes people think they can outsmart their bodies and minds a little bit, and actually
oxygen gets rarefied the higher we go really.
Yes, and it doesn't always have to be super complex.
That's it.
Although sometimes it does.
And it's a model. So I don't know about that functional medicine you do really, because a couple of years back I was looking at training in London with a functional medicine college really, which as being an osteopath you can really join a bit. And I thought the whole anamnesis and the way they were bringing on the differential diagnosis was quite interesting again. It's another really all integrative.
Absolutely.
But you need some pretty interesting immunological type knowledge as well a bit. You need to really know that your heart is linked with your kidneys and physiologically. So you need really the very strong physiological and pathological basis, and maybe even biochemical.
Well, it can get really
complicated.
Super,
but and the link
complex.
between different things. Really.
It can. But I love all that looking.
That's it.
Kind of deep into the science, and it's
complex
really
and complicated.
Hugely complex, but the testing and things which I'm really enjoying
as well.
doing. But the testing isn't essential, and not everybody can afford it because it can get a bit pricey.
What is the testing?
Well, it depends on what people
all
are
of this
bringing.
Just kind of, I understand some of the words, but most of it just flew straight past me.
Well, functional medicine is a way of really, it's a sort of, again, a whole person method of healthcare. Nutrition is really at its foundation, but it encompasses the sort of the needs of the whole person, and looking at lifestyle, stress, sleep, exercise, the whole kind of thing. And so I'm saying I'm a nutritional therapist taking a functional medicine approach. So I go into those areas.
Is that what you call yourself, as like a title? Nutritional therapist with a functional medicine?
Well, yeah,
approach?
it's kind of,
like
it is. Yeah, did so. So did additional training. So the degree I did in nutrition had a functional medicine, kind of basis to it, and then done
framework,
extra training since. So and it's an ongoing thing because research is just pouring in all the time. So I specialise because of this business of so much information, and it can get a bit overwhelming. And so I decided to try and specialise in two areas, and one is digestive health. The other one is nutrition and mental emotional health, because there's a lot of research now coming out to support the importance of nutrition around that. So I've been linking up with a psychiatrist, as I briefly mentioned, in Bristol, called Shirley, and we're going to be doing more work together. We went to an amazing conference in October.
I caught you a few... on the day I think you were at the conference.
Oh yes, yes you did. That's true.
That's it.
So
sounded quite interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah. So there's now an International Society of Nutritional Psychiatry Research. It's a bit of a tongue twister. It is. So this is the second conference. The first one was 2 years ago, and this was basically bringing together all the researchers across the world who are exploring, kind of doing research studies and looking at, kind of either supplements or dietary recommendations for people with emotional and mental health issues, from schizophrenia to low-level anxiety, to kind of bipolar. So it is such an interesting area, and the psychiatrist I'm doing I am doing more linking with, she is just so fed up of the medical model and just giving people medication that often has horrid side effects and doesn't always work. I mean, sometimes of course it does, and it's a real lifesaver, but just trying to look at a bit more of an individualized approach.
It doesn't work for everybody.
Yes,
and all medicine has a side effect, right?
Yeah.
I think so, practically.
It was on the course again. Yeah. It's systemic, which means
it will affect the whole body. It'll affect the whole body, good and bad. Yeah. So I mean, we very much, of course, take the approach that stress is the overriding factor for why people have the mood, depression, why it's so prevalent in our society, all the social media and every other little pressure that we're all under, and the kids particularly. But this approach is about trying to help people keep as resilient as possible, because if people are nutritionally depleted, they're not going to be as resilient. And also the brain is made up of like 60% fat. It needs feeding. All our blood supply, kind of circulates through the brain every couple of minutes. And so that's feeding the brain cells. It's taking the rubbish away. So if we're not feeding it properly, then also, there's going to be, your brain is just not going to get the nutrients, just not going to work.
And the resistance to changes in your environment.
Yeah.
Unexpected changes in your environment is going to put pressure on your central nervous system. And if it's not really responsive in the right fashion, conductively and, homeostatically, and thing is not really fed properly, all of a sudden it's a bit difficult. But it's on the basis that the mind is in the brain.
Yes.
Because actually we were contending that the mind is in the body.
Yes.
It's not in the brain, because otherwise the gut is not taken into account.
Well, I think
that's the whole thing, really. So, and we've come across a very interesting theory lately, which is the polyvagal theory from Mr. Porges, which actually really brings together the two areas, really, and the mutually beneficial kind of feedback mechanism, a little bit, really, bidirectional feedback mechanism even, which actually informs each other, really. So that's another quite interesting thing of looking at your cranial nerves, so your eyes, your facial expression, your smile, the tone of your voice, the height of your shoulders, and their position informs me subdiaphragmatically with that new non-myelinated alienated side of the vagus nerve on whether you're conducive to interact with socially with or not. And the gut feeling I have from that is informing my mind about the whole stuff, okay? And my respiration, because it's very close. The nucleus ambiguus is very close to the respiratory center, and facial cranial nerve as well, in the pons and things really. And supradiaphragmatic, you've got a cardiopulmonary response, which is to do with the unmyelinated, very old part of the vagus nerve, which is more from reptiles, maybe, time, and where they used to pass out and play freeze. Actually, is a play dead, play freeze. That's it.
Very good defense mechanism.
So you stop breathing, your heart slows down really drastically, and things like that. And you play dead, you get a bit rigid, basically. Okay, and that's really happening above your diaphragm, basically. Okay, and that informs you or that protects you in a situation which would be viewed by your central nervous system as life-threatening. So imagine when you got PTSD or you've got big phobias or those kind of things, you pass out. That's it really. And for humans to pass out and to stop breathing, it's not super conducive because as Helen was mentioning, the brain is quite thirsty for every little goodie possible really. I think even maybe 30% of your blood sugar is really feeding your brain or something like that, or a bit more maybe. So it's quite an interesting theory, and therefore the mind is not only in the brain, it's in your gut as well, and it's part of your body, and your it's quite an interesting concept after that dualism we were talking about from the Enlightenment a little bit, because we go back to that, and Newton and all those guys, Lavoisier, they were like quite interested, Immanuel Kant and all the Francis Bacon, all those guys were like so Descartes, don't even talk about him. They were like really trying to figure out where things were really, and all of a sudden we've got a new kind of almost developmental and almost like antediluvian, like from millions of years, and evolutionary, and maybe even epigenetic, which is another story about the whole lot really. And then we got a model that reflects really that full body reaction really. So you can't ignore your gut really. And therefore if you get certain foods which react quite badly to your gut, well, you're going to have a certain sensation, and that sensation is going to be interpreted by your central nervous system and kind of prone you to respond in certain fashions really. And so it's with people and with social interaction, or above here with life and death type threats really. So it's quite, it becomes superbly interesting really. And because we work with that, Paul Jess, really, we are filming that course at the moment on how to manage your stress a bit better from a physical and mental point of view, really. And we breach a tad the digestion and thing, but I'm no expert really. So we look at it from. We nonetheless talk a bit about hydration. We talk about chelation. We talk about ketogenic diet. We're going to talk about intermittent diet as well, and maybe exclusion diets, those kind of things really. And it's because about the supplementation, the rest is a bit of a different thing, but we know. So we got another model again, it's called expectation fulfillment theory of dream, which is quite an interesting thing from the Human Givens, who says that unfulfilled expectations are seen by your brain as a threat, and you load your autonomic nervous system, you charge your adrenaline response basically. So all that sympathetic chain and suprarenal or adrenal glands, adrenal cortex is going to work extra for a while, and then it maybe gets a bit tired. So your response to inflammation is not very good. So we know that nervous things and certain ABS and what leads to other pre-pathology is dealt with inflammation and neurological and immunological response, or autoimmune problem, all those kind of things. So all of a sudden that's linking to the feedback it gives to the brain, and the state the brain puts ourselves in, and how it prevents us from opening to the world and the changing variables there, and therefore we can't really have relational interaction as properly. And think it becomes like how to explain that and put that forward to people really. It becomes quite tricky really.
It's almost as if everything's linked, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
But that's it.
It is. Like every little cell is linked. I mean, it is all linked. It is completely linked.
The thing that we've spoken about quite a bit, obviously, all of this, but
it's been scientifically scrutinized.
It's like the mind-body separation. now like everyone likes to think that we're body, and that we've got this mind thing that we call a brain, I guess. How do you approach that? Well,
I just don't, I just think, really, it's almost like, do we still talking about that? But I think some people are, I think there is a big disconnect, because a lot of us are in our heads and, kind of just in our thought processes a lot, and it's sometimes a bit hard to remember about the
everything
old body.
Feels like it's happening up here.
Yeah, it does.
It feels like if you take this off, then something might still be happening if you move my head.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I often refer people to, kind of therapy and things when there's stuff going on, particularly around the gut, because often people come to me and they say, well, I know that stress has caused this digestive thing, but of course then they've got the digestive thing, so it's how to deal with it. But I always say, well, unless you go back to root cause and, think about how you're going to be able to, manage that differently, then it's going to, kind of manifest itself again or somewhere else. But I mean, the gut-brain link thing is just so interesting, and there's the thought that actually if your gut is inflamed and unhappy, and so Lexi was saying that can, via the vagal nerve, can kind of throw off and then send signals to the brain and cause all sorts of neuroinflammation. And I had a client not long ago who said to me that she had a course of antibiotics, and the whole thing about the microbiome and the good bacteria and the not so good bacteria. So I've been really trying to keep my finger on the pulse with that research too.
And the antibiotics just
can
not
wipe
being
it out.
Enough.
She started having panic attacks after the course of antibiotics. So she really wanted to do some digestive work, but all her doctor wanted to do is to go off to a psychologist and a psychiatrist to get support. But she really, really knew that there was something kind of going on that was actually physiological. So that's what sometimes we have to look for whether there is a bit of a biological, physiological approach.
It bubbled out, really.
Yeah.
So it came out from her gut, really.
Yeah.
So we might think the etiology is coming from her gut, really.
Yeah.
Really.
And I think years ago I might have thought that was really whacking myself, but actually now experiencing it and also knowing that we are understanding a lot more about the theories between the gut-brain link, that it's being understood by the science. So it is. And and the psychiatrists are understanding about the whole business of the inflammation and neuroinflammation, and actually that being a real kind of issue that needs to be addressed. So there's an amazing psychiatrist who's written a book called The Inflamed Mind, because he was trying to develop new psychiatric medications, but so he was being funded by a drug company, but they weren't getting very far, so he started looking at other theories and looked at the inflammatory markers that were going on with a lot of depressed people. But the tricky thing is he's now looking for a drug option, whereas actually there are dietary and kind of, if you take yourself as well out of the stress response and do a bit more chill out stuff, that also, and creative things, that can also help dampen the stress response and sleep better and all those, the exercise. So it's a whole person approach, whereas the doctors are still
you can't really come to that conclusion when you've got, well, I think it's hard to come to those conclusions unless you're actually, like I say, it's like almost like on the ground, like treating humans, treating people every day. And then you find out that obviously these roots, these like doing some creative stuff or like changing a certain aspect of your lifestyle will have like a big impact.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing a study on like 100 people and you're looking for correlations on data points, obviously the natural thing for you to do is to then try and mitigate or reduce certain data points and variables. Then obviously the best way to do that is medicine, like everyone would.
But it's to have a general marker, so we suggest tests as well to our client, our potential clients.
What does that mean?
We look at tests. We suggest tests.
Oh, so you suggest tests.
We suggest tests to our potential client for our course, which will be about cortisol. So it's a very broad spectrum. We look at their sleep pattern and we look at their heart rate variability. And as the three markers we look to really correlate the work they do physically, mentally, and about the context they're in especially, and the whole digestive thing, to try to see how they're affecting those coordinates really. And they are so broad. that you can get really a good view of the whole thing. So you can take a marker in the gut next to the glial cells in a submucosal plexus. But yes, you can maybe look at other markers that are a bit more general, which affect as a cascade, which are the prime movers of the whole thing, really. Okay, so the inflammation is a cardiac thing, and it's all the tributary of what cardiac is, all the rest, really. So having the HRV and sleep and adrenal function, I think you get quite a good view of, and you can measure, I think, well enough and see a decrease or an increase in your ability to deal with stress. That's the thing, really. Which is what we want. We want people to be more resilient. Absolutely. We don't want them to be not stressed. No. We want them to be able to cope with stress. Because you're going to all be stressed. Really.
Yeah, you're going to be stressed around.
Some people just died in a volcano this week, really. You know, of any good thing, when you get to the door and see Peter, so how did you die? I slept in the shower, I cracked my head open. And how did you die? Well, I was in a bloody erupting volcano. That's pretty, like,
so it's a bit of a different,
that's it, it's a bit of a different way, really. But shit happened, and a lot of us have to deal with the stress in a way, really.
Yeah, because that's the thing with like social media. I'm more pro it than I am anti it, and that is because it like sharing information on that wider scale is obviously has its massive cons, I'm sure, but overall I think it's really, really positive, and it's not about taking it away.
No,
because I know a lot of people personally who have issues with it or have had issues
to
with
get some context. You need a lot of content, so therefore a discussion of less than an hour about a certain subject loses a bit its text in a way. It's just the content needs to be increasing a bit, and I think there's a thirst for people who can articulate some of their ideas a bit better and in a certain way, and try to really look at that on a bit of a length, taking a journey a little bit, and a journey where it takes you from A to B, but we're not sure where B is in a way, really. It doesn't matter too much, really. It's just how you respond in a way in that journey from stress, really, and the different approaches, and that's the main thing, to have an approach, really. So a lot of osteopaths talk about techniques, and they are cranial or structural or visceral or something like that, but they're just techniques, really. It's just one technique.
Pick one, any one kind of thing.
That's it. And one can become an approach, but it can be just a technique along different things, really. So it loses almost its, when you look at human people, you lose the technique, really. You have to look at the approach and the context and the framework, and whether it's intelligible. It's all dopamine driven, really. Okay, motivation and your whole articulation of the plan. If you don't believe in the whole lot, you go to the doctor backwards to have a colonoscopy, you get stressed, really. But if you go there because you think that the thing you've been trying to do for your digestive system in the last 3 months is not actually getting better, and you're a bit worried and the whole lot, you might want to get reassured. So you go willingly to it, and it's actually far less stressful, really, because you got a plan. That's the thing, really. And therefore you're more educated, you're less stressed, and you're less subject to making little movie on a bloody castle in Spain. It's not Don Quixote, really. Okay? Because that's a bit that, really. I think the annoyance about all that medical and very allopathic approach is, when very well explained, allopathy is very interesting. That's the whole thing, really. But it cannot justify being the only way to deal with a human person, basically.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing, really. So it can't be arrogant enough. And I think there is a bit of a status and a control and a financial security and a bit the knowledge and a set of knowledge a little bit that part of the approach is really having a bit. They are a bit left-brained, a bit too much in a medical approach, basically. They tend to be a little bit too radical, a little bit. They should be a bit more in the middle, and the functional approach is very interesting for that, really, because it's a gentle approach as well.
I work with quite a lot of doctors who take a very integrative approach,
but
they're sadly in the minority. But there's a great centre in Bristol that I'm a board member of, and I was there, so a nutritional therapist, called the National Centre for Integrative Medicine, and it is a group of doctors, and they're all trying to bring together kind of just the two worlds really of medical and complementary, and they're trained in other things and acupuncture and all sorts, and they're bringing together people of other disciplines, and they're doing this diploma in
but again, we've
integrative
got
medicine,
somebody who manages the whole patient instead of letting the patient manage himself in a way, really. So that's why the whole status is, again, so it's the doctors who lead a bit the thing, because they are the one who can articulate and direct the whole thing a bit better. In a way, it's still the same a bit. It's the patient who need to use the doctor as well as other people, and if everybody has got the same approach from a different field, people can go and there, and it's the same underlying thing. So we don't define things the same. That's the main problem, really, at times, really. So
what do you mean we don't define things the same?
But I don't know, like what homeostasis is, what a patient is, what a diagnosis is.
We all have a different different reality of what
that's it.
Yeah, well, people are individual, aren't they? I don't love labels. Sometimes they're really useful, especially if you've got a solution for them. But a lot of the time it is, there's an individual there with a set of symptoms. But often if they're given a label, they're just directed there, or they're told, oh, it's fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue. So you just put that on your sick certificate. But actually it's not actually going to be anything that really helps them, and actually, so we're always looking at, well, why have they got chronic fatigue, why have they got this joint pain? Let's try and dig around and see and look at their circumstance and how they're living and their situation, as well as what they're eating, and whether there's underlying kind of toxic problems or vitamin deficiencies or other things that might be really, really playing a part.
One of my cameras just decided to stop.
No, it's very interesting, because it's all a bit to do with, is the symptom really reflecting the experience the patient is having of the whole illness, really? And I think it's, again, an interesting exercise, really, but sometimes it comes to a bit of a dead end, and if it comes to an open route and an open path, I think it becomes very interesting, but the fact that it leads to a solution, I think, is maybe not that good either. It needs to come with an articulation of a process that can be iterated and changed over time, because circumstances are going to change as well in a way, and your symptom and your set of symptoms at the moment is going to be different later, really. If you're a 30-year-old, wait another 20-year-old as a woman, and you're going to have maybe hormonal pressure a little bit, so your stress is going to be coming from a different thing at different time, really. So therefore you need to the approach to be able to iterate it over time in light of the changing of environment, really. So it's called resilience, really. We want people to be a bit more resilient to those things, and they need to learn the framework a little bit, so that they can be put back at the center of their own health, basically.
Absolutely.
That's the thing, really.
And most people kind of know what they need to change on some level. They're just taking, they're just, like us all, trying to get on with our life and get away with things and avoiding things and whatever else. And, for as long as we possibly can, because that's just human nature, isn't it? And, we all want to just play and, have fun and eat whatever we like because it tastes nice and all those things. And, and then it's like, something's gone a bit wrong. And,
but the social media can scare us about certain things that are not very good. Oh, don't have omega-3 oils from krill because the North Sea is full of DTP and fire retardants. You're like, but yes.
Well, this is a problem now, and I've started seeing, because having worked with eating disorders for so long, so there's a new term called orthorexia, which is it's like anorexia, but actually people are really, really scared of eating anything that's not super healthy, and it becomes like very, very serious, and they get serious anorexic issues. So then my whole work turns around to be sort of prescribing pizza and like go home and have some birthday cake and just a bit just test yourself by trying to just have a little bit of something, but it's but it gets a really deep psychological thing, and I think the problem is there's so much that
it's all about control, I think.
It is. But I think particularly young people are so bombarded because not only is all the healthy, what should I eat, what shouldn't I eat, but within that we've got all the ethical thing and the vegan message and everybody getting super anxious about animals, which is of course important. But it's like let's make sure. But then there are some farms that are being they're raising their animals very sustainably and then so there's the environmental message and then there's all the sustainability message and
but we talk
should it become vegan or not.
We talk about the radical left and we talk about postmodernism. We don't talk about health really. That's a whole lot really. It's just the political landfill really, which is not really very
well, no, we talk about health, not that. What we should be talking about
is health.
Is that not health? Because people saying like everyone should go vegan. They're not talking about health. Although they think they say they are.
Yes, not actually. Necessarily.
It's not really about health. It's more about doing stuff for the planet.
It's a lifestyle.
I find that I really do understand that, but
you can't do things for the planet if you don't do things for yourself.
On the planet without some detrimental effect on something, on some system, and we've taken a very long time, or our bodies have taken a long time to evolve, if you believe that, which is probably true, and our bodies have taken a long time to develop what we've eaten. And just to completely remove something, I know a lot of my friends who are vegan, they supplement on things, and I think that's great and it's smart of them to do it, but at the same time I don't like, maybe we're not that simple and maybe we need to absorb things with certain other things, and also maybe we've
you need to share a plate with somebody else as well.
Our lineage is different, so maybe we need to think about more about what
eating dinner together.
Generations before us ate.
The gregarious thing, the state it puts you in to digest in that vagal thing, and it's infradiaphragmatic. So it's the best time for you to communicate with other people because you're going to be even more astute with their facial expression. And it's you're quite close to them as well, so you could talk. My God, you have to talk. But no, you take your supplement and you take your pill and actually you poo it and it's fine at the bottom of your septic tank because you've not even digested it. So it's a bit like indeed.
That's the conversation at the moment.
How do you feed yourself?
It's not.
You feed yourself with food. Well, if we were cattle or if we were snails, we would feed ourselves with food. But we're humans. We feed ourselves with other people. We feed ourselves with hobbies. We feed ourselves with spirituality, with all the other things, really. And that's when is it the best time to do that? When you feed yourself the food as well. So it's quite... We miss the point a bit. We're anorexic of not the food, but we're anorexic of, or we're bulimic of, or we're mentally ill of not being with other people really, and ourselves really. That's the thing, because we react to other people. That's the whole thing. So your vagus nerve reacts to your brain, but it's doing that to react to other people. So if you do that on your own, well, you miss the point really a bit really. Again really. So the social media should be an interesting platform to bring people a bit and to talk about the whole lot. But if you talk about disease and the bloody role of on the planet, you miss the point a bit. That's the thing really. You cannot be feeling right without the planet feeling right. Great, but you can't. The planet can't feel right if you feel right. That's the problem, really. And a little change you're going to make in yourself can be applied outward. We talked about responsibility. We talked about that, really. And I guess you're 13-year-old. You're pretty freaking useless anyway. No, that's the thing, really. Is to be remembered a bit, really. So. And even when you're 30-year-old, you're pretty useless. And I know a few 45-year-old who are, still quite pretty useless as well, really. So that's the thing a bit. Because I think
You didn't say my age, so...
That's it. I didn't say...
How do you approach the people who are like, no, I'm staying vegan? I guess you can work around it.
Of course. And I would never, if somebody's taken that ethical, or whatever decision, then I Absolutely. I sometimes challenge it a bit because I try and find out where they've got their facts from, because there is a lot of vegan propaganda at the moment. There's big programs out there, and the science isn't balanced. And a lot of my clients were sort of telling me about Game Changer and things, and I started to look, and then I just thought after 5 minutes, I'm not having Arnie Schwarzenegger tell me about nutrition knowledge. Thank you very much.
Definitely just carving into a steak.
I know, it was like, no. But then, and I just thought, I actually can't watch that. But then I looked at some of the sites. No, I couldn't. I just had too much of a reaction. I just thought, there's a bit of a joke in, kind of the scientific field about that's where people now are getting their information from. It's like from celebrities and wellness bloggers. And it's like, no, that is not reliable information.
A number of them that have gone back to eating either eggs or meat.
Yeah, and the fact is that, so I challenge it a bit, because also the sustainability and environmental message isn't actually as strong as people might think, and because actually, unless you're eating really consciously and locally, which is actually quite difficult to do in a balanced way, because vegans need nuts and seeds. Well, it's a bit hard to find those locally
in Bristol.
In Bristol, enough cashew nuts and almonds and wherever, and avocados, where do they get flown in on? So there's so many things that people think, oh, I'm doing this, and then you look at the plate and think, oh, that's quinoa from South America. They are growing a brand now here in the UK. But so it's that, and also say to people, but you have to. Most people come to me because they've got quite serious health problems. That's why they're forking out the money, so I really challenge them that actually, if they are going to eat in that way, we've got to really look at how they're eating. But the main person who ran this conference, the Nutrition and Psychiatry Conference, a professor who's written a great book called Brain Changer, she actually links vegetarian and veganism food to a major risk factor for poor mental health. And I've certainly had parents bring young kids to me who say, my daughter went vegan a year ago and now she's a recluse and things. But I mean, it doesn't, it's not as if I'm completely against it, because
a teenager wants more control and a bit more competence and a bit more status and a bit more attention from her mom. So it ticks quite a few boxes. That's it. Really.
Yeah, it is a real control.
So it's not called veganism. It's called control, security, safety.
And it's
not
attention. As if I'm against it completely, because I'm completely supportive of people who've made that message, and I think there's a lot that we need to look at in terms of animal welfare. It is horrendous practices, and desperately sad. So we all need to be eating less
potential
meat.
For diseases. Swine flu, bird flu is not going to happen in a garden of in Shipton Mon at the lady in her orchard, really, for sure. Really. It's going to happen in a battery full of millions of chickens,
and also all the antibiotic hits you get from them, all the farm fish. I mean,
90% of antibiotics are in the food industry,
and so we're consuming them in that way, and people don't understand that. So it's one of the things that I'm really against, farm fish and mass farming and the grain fed animals, which then creates very inflammatory meat. Whereas actually, and yes, to eat good meat is more expensive than just eat less of it, but better quality, and kind of
vegetarian. Is a cow who needs to be vegetarian, not you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a cow who needs to be vegetarian, not you. That's it. Really.
And
strictly
it'd be
vegetarian.
Interesting to know who you follow in the nutritional space, because there's a handful of people that I sadly religiously follow, just because I tried a handful, and these are the people who are generally they're always questioning everything, including their own stuff, especially their own stuff.
I tend not to follow people, isn't that? I mean, it's possibly an age thing, because it's because I've got a research background, and I'm always, I might go on to this website called Healthline. It has quite balanced health information, and then, but I'll always be looking at their research references, and I go to the source. I go to the source. I mean, of course, there's people like, as I was saying, that professor who has written a book. I'll always want to know their credential. It's called Brain Changer. By Professor Felice Jacker. So I do, and sometimes I go to some of the American functional medicine people and there's some gut people that I follow, because I do things around bacterial overgrowth, and there's a good guy called Dr. Ruscio and Alison Seebecker who do bacterial. But generally, I try and go to the science side, because that's
the framework.
Yeah, So I don't know anybody. I mean, there's Ranjan Chatterjee, who was brilliant in the functional medicine sphere, and he's great, and he's giving people the real basics of like how to live and good lifestyle, nutrition, all those things. So I think if people are really at the beginning of their journey and all this health thing, and they aren't sleeping well or aren't eating well, something like 5 Pillars to Health. I haven't actually read it big, but I've met him and I've seen him, and it looks good.
Eat, exercise,
movement, it's the basics.
Talk to people,
and
be the sunshine.
And it is the UK rather than America, because so many of these books are American, and they're a bit over the top, and everybody's busy just looking beautiful.
He's actually the only UK guy that I read every now and
he does lovely podcasts and with good people. Because the problem is there's so many egos out there. I mean, I've been in this world for 30 years, and the egos I've met and the people making these claims, and it's just to get people through the door, and it's highly questionable, really, a lot of this. So it's like you really have to be discerning about
the mercantile thing, really.
Yeah.
But we all need to make a living, and those
absolutely.
people work and do other things to. Trust. It's trust. I think it's trust. Is it people you can trust, really? Are you able to trust your therapist? Are you able, as a therapist, to trust your patient?
Yes.
And I think it's about trust, really. Do you trust the Queen to give you your pound in gold for your £20 note, really? And
every time.
The pint is going to be the same than your mate at the pub, really. That's why there's a pint, really. Trust is everywhere, really.
And it's a tricky thing. I mean, I always say, look, I try and keep my finger on the pulse of the evidence, but, I'm not going to be able to read absolutely everything.
That's
and, I will do my best, absolute best, with all the experience I have to support you. But, the body's really complex. We'll start somewhere. I'll try and act as your health detective, looking at where I think there may be things either nutritionally or other things out of balance, or redirect you to people or what have you. We'll do our best together. And sometimes it really works, and other times it's just like you are not getting a shift for whatever reason, and it's lovely when it works. And but and
then I guess it's also quite nice from a professional perspective when it doesn't work, because you've got a few more things that you need to figure out, and then hopefully get to a solution which then works.
Well, I think the body sometimes, the body is so complex, and sometimes, so somebody I saw the other day, he'd gone to America, spent absolutely loads on about 15 different tests. He brought me them to analyze, and he was trying to outsmart his body and his and I think he's got a very stressful life situation,
his
all
left
sorts
brain
of things,
took over.
and actually he was getting so stressed out because everything was interacting, and my cortisol and my DHA and my gut microbiome. I mean, it's like, whoa, let's just go back to basics and think about things like how are you breathing, what are you doing in your day, you're working 15 hours, and it's like, no,
balance.
this is not so. It's just trying to think really the best
or
way.
If you want to keep the 50 hours a day work or 15 hour day work, you need to do other things. So that's the thing, really. It's not to not do the 15 hours if it feeds you, and if it feeds you more, but you have to feed yourself differently, maybe hydrate differently, sleep differently, do other things in order to withstand that level of demand as well, really. That's the thing of it. So if it's very important to him, he's not obviously going to change his 15 hour and very busy because he's really on his adrenal at the moment, really. So is to support that, and all of a sudden maybe one day he realizes that needs to be changed, really. And maybe the financial security is gaining from his work, and the attention is getting from his work, or maybe shifted other way. So all of a sudden you take your focus of attention chases away from what matters to you. And that's the difficult part of being a therapist, because you can't say, well, actually, obviously it's because you work 15 hours a day. Well, he might have a £6 million mortgage, really, and 15 hours is not really enough, really.
No, and it's like, why is somebody doing that? And it's like, where does that lead? And
where
it's
does
possibly,
that lead?
issues in the family or whatever, or kind of background, and it's just
and the psychiatric or psychotherapeutic or the counseling or the hypnotherapeutic focus hypnotherapy type thing, where you can, or coaching who really narrow things down, really, and you help people to deal with their environment a bit better, really. So they don't have to change their environment too much, because it's control again. So you have to control your environment again instead of trying to control yourself, really. So
control's a big part.
It's a balance between the two, really. How do we go about? How do we approach things, really?
Do you even Do you step into that territory at all, saying when people give you like a lot of information about their lifestyle and whether that's working 15 hours a day?
Oh yeah, I do. I'll only usually touch on it and say I think this is something that is really important, and actually possibly more important than nutrition. And actually, until this is addressed, then maybe we're only going to be able to do so much. So, and recommend that they go and talk to someone or go and do something or find out how it is that they might be able to change whatever they wanted, that feels that they could change. So yeah, I step into all those things, and I'm always giving people real lectures about, kind of just, kind of calming down all that, kind of just the level of arousal that is around for everybody. And it takes a huge toll. And it's just how are people going to reconnect with nature and just chill a bit, connect with things that are more meaningful for them and creative things. So it's a definite, I bring all that in. There's questions on my on the form for all those areas, and some people obviously don't want to go there, and you don't. There's only so much time, and then it's like
and
fine.
So much your approach can fit there. We talk about, I don't know if you do, but we talk about external and internal locus of focus.
I know that one.
Which is quite an interesting thing, really.
Is.
And it's not that we want to pigeonhole people, but
no.
we want to understand how they function as best as possible, so we can interact with them in their mode of reality, in a way, really, in their mode of functioning. So if somebody wants you to take the helm to help them to do the whole lot, maybe to start with, you need to do that a bit that way, really. And even if it goes a bit against what you want to do, so you need to maybe carry people a little bit and see, really. On the proviso, you explain to them how it works, really, a bit. Really.
I don't do that. I don't do things like, I really leave a lot of the responsibility to them, whatever.
I'd like to, of course.
It probably works more in the therapy realm, because sometimes people come to me and say, "Well, just tell me what to eat, do meal plans," and it's like, no, because it's just not going to work. People have to take the responsibility themselves. I look at the meal plans that they create.
Helen, I've lost my meal plan, and look at me now. You haven't sent me the PDF.
No, it's just like, we'll give broad guidelines and direction, but and sometimes they do quite specific diets if they've got stuff going on or digestion. So it sometimes gets kind of a bit narrow, but with always the aim that will get to a place where you can manage most foods. But I don't do meal plans. So when I see people, young girls with eating issues and things, they have been it's a control issue, but also they've got a real thing about authority often, and they've been to eating disorder clinics or what have you, where people have said, you've got to do this, you've got to eat that, and I'm giving you these meal plans, and I completely turn it around and say, unless you take the responsibility yourself, you are never gonna get well. So you tell me, I'm not writing it down at all, you write it down, you give it to me, I'll look at it and see, and I say, I think you should be having more protein or calcium or whatever, but no, this has got to, because you're always trying to rally that sort of active part in somebody who wants to heal and wants to get well.
Endorphins.
Motivation.
We've been working on this course on pain that we've been putting together over the last year, and we'll be continuing to do over the next 6 months. And I think one of the biggest things from being treated by Alexei and spending more time with him is that he always talks about, and I always think that I always thought this is a bit brutal, but he's always on about when people come to see him, it's their pain, it's their issue, and he's there to steer them in the right direction and maybe reduce some of the pain and the discomfort and the imbalances and stuff through various techniques, but he's not there to get rid of it forever. It's about them then acting on what information he's giving them. And I think the more I think about that and apply that to every area of my life, professional, personal, and it's in the act of doing that you end up, of course it is in the act of doing that you end up learning more. You just understand the whole situation. Again, this Confucius thing that you told me once, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. And it's like,
absolutely. But also as a therapist, or we're all sitting around this table, it's like, if you think you're going to take your pain, that's the cause for burnout. If we're thinking we're taking responsibility, what we're doing is giving people tools, listening to their story, giving us some ideas, and then it's down to them. It's absolutely none of our right or whatever, they can do with it absolutely what they want. And the more we hold on to, this is down to us to get people well. And I think,
and the more open the framework, the better.
And it's like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and they're not, and it's like that's a major cause to burnout. You have to leave people, you do your absolute best, and when they're with you, they're the most important person, and when you're emailing them or whatever, and then there's the letting go, because we all hear terrible stories all the time, and it is, majorly painful. But if you got completely carried away and thought it was your responsibility,
you miss the point.
What do you mean?
As a therapist,
well, just like they're on their journey, or and it is you
not
do whatever.
Yourself to it. Yeah,
no. So because that's where ego comes in, and then you get let down because people can. Not everybody gets well. Not everybody will be out of physical, emotional, whatever pain, and you can't do anything about some things, however hard you try. It's
people resenting you are never the best people to interact with. Yeah, that's true. No, it's difficult as a therapist. Lots of therapists are poorly, actually.
Well, what I've obviously said to a few people that I'm studying a psychotherapy course, and everyone's response is that it's quite like, I don't know if I could be a therapist, and I'm not sure if I want to be one, but that I wouldn't be able to do it for more than a couple of years. And again, since doing this course, it's really changed and from what you said and what you're saying, it's like none of your responsibility what that person then goes and does with the professional, well-educated, well-experienced information you give them. And it's like, that's so genius, but it's not obvious at all. And again, it does, like you say, it does require you to remove your ego, because if you want to be the hero for that person, that's the only reason.
And it's really nice when it happens. I love it when it goes right, and that's of course why I'm in the work. But it doesn't always go right. And I think I learned a lot of that through nursing and working with people with cancer. And actually, working with people with cancer, sometimes what we did is facilitate them to have a really good death. And that was, yes, they were coming to want life, but actually at that cancer help centre. But sometimes it was about facilitate, and actually that is an amazing thing to do.
That must be so nuts.
Well,
that must be so crazy the first time that you have to confront the fact that what your role now has to be to give that person the best death possible.
Yeah. Well, it's a really
not for you to do it, for them to do it.
Yeah.
To give them as much of the volition and control possible to do the whole thing, all what they can do. So you need to potentiate them. You need to help them to do as much as they can themselves, really. Yeah. And because it's what humans do, really.
Yeah, and help the supporters. So and sometimes supporters feel like they're so the Cancer Help Centre that I was working at was residential. People used to come and have short residential courses and learn all these things about relaxation, about food, about acupuncture, things that might help some of their symptoms. But the supporters would come, and sometimes it was the supporters who were like desperate, you got to cure them, whereas actually the person had come to a degree of acceptance that probably the state of their cancer was that actually they might probably not get well, and so then the work was really to help the supporter kind of manage that situation. And it was a real relief often for people who were very unwell to have that, because it was like freedom. Otherwise it's such a burden. I think if sometimes somebody's most people want to live for a long time, for as long as possible, being as well as possible,
or at least don't want to confront death.
Well, we don't want to confront life either, really. That's the main problem as well at times, really. So when you haven't confronted life, I can tell you, when you have to see Peter at the bloody gate, he's got a key, remember, not, the door is open, the key is just there because he's bashing you on the bloody head, really. That's the main thing, really, Peter is going to say, who did you try to look like? And if you say anybody else's but yourself, he's going to smash you proper and send you back, really, because you haven't really, I don't know, that's the thing, is a journey to find yourself, really. And I think death is the last chapter, or the last page, or the last word, the last dot on it, really. And if you're not the one writing it, well... That's it, really. If people take that away from you, that's it, really. I guess. No, it's life and death, but it's health and non-health, and
quality
it's
of life,
being a human, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
And being conscious of being conscious, and the fact that we are without our consciousness, there's no reality outside our consciousness, really. That's the thing, really. Is a movie there, even if you're not there to experience it, in a way, really?
Yeah.
Does it really matter?
The movie doesn't care.
That's it. Or is it? I mean, really, that's
is
a bit
the
the
movie
same.
the movie?
Well, no.
Or is your experience the movie?
Well, that's it.
Oh.
That's it, or both. Anyway, but that's after that it's a bit eschatological discussion a bit, and epistemological and ontological, but I think it's the whole health part of it, and the whole fact that people are making it too complicated and they're too conflicted, and they don't have the framework to make it more simple, really.
Saying that, guys, I think I'm beginning to kind
Fade.
of fade a little bit.
That's it.
I think I need
Let's wrap
a
it
long
up.
day, but I don't know whether there's
Good
anything
job.
that you felt that we needed to do a bit more of.
Is there anything you've got coming up that, I don't know, what are you excited about in
2020?
Yeah.
2020. I think I'm probably most excited about the work that I'm going to be doing with this psychiatrist, and we're developing a
What was her name again?
collaborative. Shirley Gracias, and she's a child psychiatrist, but she's stepping out of mainstream psychiatry and very interested in a sort of more whole person approach, and trying to sort of challenge the kind of current medical model of mental health and look at more natural approaches.
Yes.
And so about a year ago we started developing a collaborative which we called Health Hive, with the idea that we were trying to bring together quite experienced practitioners from sort of different multidisciplinary approaches who want to come together to kind of develop something, and we don't know quite what it is. We haven't really got an agenda, but recognise that that people need supporting more than just at the moment. Most of people are given just a very medicalized kind of psychiatric approach, and it's very limited. And so I think my dream, and I'm not sure how much we'll do of this, but because the cancer charity I worked at offered this very, very holistic approach to cancer, and I'd like to see the same for a sort of holistic approach to mental health. But quite how I'll see it and what my role will be or how it's developed, I don't know. And it's also a little ambitious because mental health is hugely complex, and it's more complex in a way than cancer. So but there's probably about a handful of us who are meeting from time to time, and we're just seeing where that goes, really. But I'm excited. It's just like throwing a pebble into the water and seeing where it goes as a concept. But,
the unifying framework of mental health, which is going to be quite interesting, because there's 963 fashion to approach mental health, really. I guess thermal infrared spectrography, there's only one way of doing it, really.
There's so much that could be done, and we'd want to involve open-minded psychiatrists, because the medical model has its place too.
Very much so.
But so at the Cancer Help Centre I worked at, we had doctors there, but we also had nutritional therapists, relaxation people teaching relaxation, art therapists, all sorts of people just helping people think, what is this all about?
Things, really. Of course.
And what is this set of symptoms, and have a bit of time for reflection and think about maybe not only kind of
very
what the mind's doing,
educational,
but also how they ask, because sometimes there is a real biological reason, which is from the body, about why people's minds are not feeling great, and that's possibly because of not eating properly, or because the guts are out of balance, or something else. But it's unlikely to be the only part. It's likely that also they've been very stressed, or maybe childhood trauma or other things. So it's trying to bring a bit of it all together. But it's a bit complex, so I'm not sure where it's all going to go or how far it'll go. But
education is the way forward. Education.
Quite an exciting potential.
Children.
It feels really like there's a few people that I've met who want to do a similar thing, and I would love to do a similar thing when I'm ready to be able to do something like that. But it feels really nice to have, because it is quite time consuming, I guess, really, with lots of different people. But you get, the way I kind of vision it is like you get lots of people who are good at what they do, and then people kind of come into the clinic, your hive or whatever, and then you assess them, and then you're like, this is what we're going to do first. And as you have more experience with different people, obviously the route into getting better, the first thing that you do is obviously becomes more optimal. And I love as an idea. I think that's what it's like. I think it could work really, really well.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you don't really know where it's going to go yet, but you've just got like this step and try and mold it around.
I've just got to try and make time for it because my private practice is really busy and it's teaching and things, and it's like, oh, do I have time? But actually, I keep coming back to, yes, I really want to. So I'll,
Nice.
Was that doing 15 hours a day?
Only 15 hours.
Goes down to 15 hours.
Yeah, but and we all have to look after ourselves too, don't we, Alexi?
Yes, we do.
Otherwise, we come to Alexi with our aches and pains and say, Alexi.
That's it.
But,
sort me out.
Sort me out.
My pain's your problem now.
Yeah, right. I'm paying you.
For the next 45 minutes.
Sort it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great.
Superb. Thank you.
And what about you? What's your goal for the year next year?
For next year, finish this course on pain, and I would like to finish the first year on this human Givens psychotherapy model.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, that's probably my aim for 2020.
And what about you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm finishing the training to be a human given psychotherapist.
But this,
so I'll finish in March.
You will have finished all of it, right?
Yeah, in March. Yeah.
So,
to put a second string to my bow, because I've been dangling the same string for a little while, so I want to get another one really. Maybe I'll do a nutritional degree as well to be able to have the third string.
Start collecting
the third string. I think 3 things are always better. You can see the table moves quite a lot because it's not on 3 feet really. It's on 4 feet.
Spinning
That's it.
Yeah, that's a great table. Is it a wheel?
Yeah, it's an old cable wheel.
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah,
well,
really
thanks,
easy
guys.
No worries. Thank you, Helen, for
thank you
coming
very
and
much
sharing with us.
That's fine. See how.